Carl Faubert, private detective, had just traveled thousands of kilometers from Montreal to reach this remote middle-of-nowhere area, situated near the far northern Lake Etamipek. Granted, this was a great distance to cover for a sole client, but word had it that he was a particularly wealthy one. Carl had to drive a bit further north in order to meet with wealthy industrialist William Hamilton. Hamilton is waiting for Carl in the general store. It was time for him to get down to business. Hamilton was a prosperous owner who had acquired various businesses as well as metal mines in this northern region. Hamilton never mentioned a road-blocking barrier. Why was it needed here in the back of Beyond? That would, however, be a mystery for another day. Carl had waited long enough for someone to come and raise it. Hamilton never mentioned a road-blocking barrier. Why was it needed here in the back of Beyond? That would, however, be a mystery for another day. Carl had waited long enough for someone to come and raise it. Hamilton no doubt knew who managed the barrier. Carl wanted to give him a call, but that would have been too easy though, as sure enough the line was acting up. The cutters made quick work of the chain. What better way to investigate vandals than to get into their shoes, Carl, the professional vandal, thought, reveling in the irony of the situation. Always striving to uphold uprightness, Carl, feeling the need to appease his guilty conscience, left a $10 note as damages. William Hamilton enjoyed a lavish country house built in the very heart of the northern forests, not too far from here. The local populace was divided when it came to the affluent man. Some saw a wealthy philanthropist dedicated to improving the region's economy. Others an aging Englishman who would do anything to further his fortunes. And those ones hated him enough to go on about scheming against him. Carl was not made aware that winter would come early this year. The North made clear who was the boss up there. Snow, which didn't care much about the date when it felt like dumping its first load of the year. Hamilton had recently acquired a few local businesses, but the last straw was the reopening of a mine, which gave rise to a wave of protests and threats from the Cree people. Given these circumstances, Carl reckoned that a good number of people must be feeling compelled to oppose Hamilton in one way or another. So far, only the industrialist's house had been a target, but soon enough, Carl thought, the target would become the man himself. The truck was running on fumes. Good thing that the general store was close by. Carl, ever diligent in his work, always carried his log on him, in which he scribbled down thoughts and leads alike during the course of his investigations. A milkman had to drive by every week to fill the bottles. The fresh milk indicated a recent visit. An explosion suddenly occurred outside. Maintaining his composure, Carl recalled something from his military training. Wolves always stay away from populated areas. Wait, was it about bears? Hate was in the air. Seems like some villagers barely tolerated each other. Carl was no electrician, but he could identify a wiring problem when he saw one. Whatever happened here, things got pretty rough, and not a trace of Hamilton. Finding a key is easy. Finding the right keyhole, not so much. The snowstorm pummeled everything in its path. Carl was not surprised when he heard no tone. Gilles Lachance, Carl recollected, was the general store's manager. Should Hamilton not be available, he was the man to talk to. Or what if Hamilton had moved up his appointment with his physician? Carl was no electrician, but he could identify a wiring problem when he saw one. You don't leave ammunition out in the open like this. Was Gilles Lachance that careless? The Polaroid, Carl's long-standing and faithful ally, had seen its share of husbands caught red-handed cheating. There's always something out there waiting to be snapped away. The crowbar was stuck under the lift. Notwithstanding Carl's imposing stature, car lifting wasn't part of his skill set yet. Carl was making progress, but the lift probably needed some more juice to work properly. At long last, the crowbar was within Carl's grasp. Surely it would come in handy at some point. Carl wondered what the hell could that thing be. It looked like a man fossilized in ice. All of a sudden, Carl felt like he was pulled inside a world of dreams, a cold, unknown dimension. Somehow, self-control was slipping from his grasp. To all appearances, this was a hunting log. Better yet, a war diary. What could these engraved numbers mean? A fresh path suddenly appeared before Carl. The vision slowly faded away, like an icicle melting in the palm of your hand. Carl, back in the real world, now knew who the icebound man was. Gilles Lachance, the general store's manager himself. That had to be the worst parking job ever. Who was Carl to judge, though? It may be customary to park like that around these parts, or not. According to that log, it seemed like the whole village owed some money to the general store. Carl was far more interested in the bunch of nearby addresses he had just gotten his hands on, though. The track was fresh. That meant the car sunk down just a little while ago. Now where the hell could the passengers possibly have gone? Someone must have dropped this in a hurry, but whoever did was heading into the woods. Carl's tracking instincts were quickly kicking in. Carl knew why he was suddenly shivering. He was going back to the realm of visions. Carl had no issue recognizing the spirit-like figures, but he couldn't figure out what they wanted from him. The phantom, freed of reality's shackles, vanished in the forest. Earlier, Carl had witnessed a tragedy that befell it. The further Carl moved away from the ice block, the more his senses came back to him. Carl sensed that the cold was beating a retreat, as if he was moving away from some kind of center of gravity. Numbness was giving way to awareness. The vision was wavering. An axe, not too shabby. Carl felt he needed to protect himself. It was a typical shack, just like the ones you hear about in Quebecois legends. Local lumberjacks used it to rest and twice a day heat up their pea soup. Who quits a game one step away from victory? The leftover food, the clothes, the general warmth of the place, no evidence of escape. Carl was sure of it. People were here not long ago, and they expected to come back. Complaining was not important.